So this is a session of two parts. The first part is me just sort of talking a bit about agency best practice, and then a really good sort of code demo that Jerome sitting down here is going to do in the second half. So I'm going to get on with my bit as quickly as we can so that we can get to the really exciting stuff. So I've been working with Umbraco for 5 or 6 years, I think, so quite a long time. Crumpled Dog develops websites for companies of all different sorts and sizes, from a little coffee shop literally just around the corner from here to a sort of national subscription TV channel. So the varying different challenges from very small budgets to very complex infrastructure. And Jerome, you probably all know, current MVP, and you've probably all used the DAMP package, which is probably his most famous creation to date. Let's see if this computer wants to change slides. Yes. Okay, so why have a agency framework? And what is it? So this is an example of the Crumpled Dog framework. It's currently in version 3. We've had 2 previous versions, and I have a funny feeling we're going to have version 4 very soon for Umbraco 7, because there's obviously quite a lot of changes with property editors that it's probably going to need a completely new version in terms of the packages it supports and the like. But version 3, which is what all this is about Umbraco 6.1 and 0.2 when that comes out in a few weeks' time. It's an MVC implementation, so there isn't a single XSLT in there, which is kind of sad and good. It's basically a starter kit, but it's a starter kit that includes loads of packages as well, because actually packages make up a significant part of most implementations that we do. Our framework does come with a front end sort of template, which is created in Bootstrap, but it's really just as a guide. And actually, the first thing anybody does when they start with our framework is delete all the Bootstrap stuff and start again. So why do we have it? It's really easy to create a site in Umbraco, and anyone can do it really quickly. And that's one of the great things about Umbraco. So one of the main reasons we have it is because we end up, if we've got 4 different people all creating different Umbraco sites, we end up with so many different conventions and naming, and that's not a problem if the same developer works on the same website. But in reality, that doesn't happen. Developers go on holiday, developers come and go. So one of the things our framework aims to do is ensure consistency across sites. I think you can just about see this. So this is 3 different websites created by 3 different developers, and actually the naming convention is the same. So it's very easy for, and these are just document types, it's very easy for a different developer to open up one of these websites and quite quickly, or very quickly, be able to fix the issue that their colleague has left them when they went to Canada for 3 weeks. Another major reason for us for having a framework is to try and reduce what we call YSOD fear. I don't know how many people here are, or consider themselves C# developers, but YSOD for a C# developer is just another thing to deal with and the next thing to deal with. But for a front-end developer or even a project manager, they are really scary things. This is a picture here of our production director, who's probably the worst person to come across a YSOD, because he will generally freak out and ask everybody he can in the vicinity to help him sort that out as soon as he can. So we try and reduce YSODs by, when somebody takes a framework, all the packages that are installed we know are compatible. We know there's not going to be any YSODs caused by any of the packages, and we find that generally YSODs are caused by developers or front-enders installing a package that is only compliant with 2 versions of Go and Umbraco or something like that. So another very good reason for having a framework is saving time. So we think we save between a day and 2 days at the start of any project from having a framework, because there's no need to research what packages might be useful for the project, no need to install them, download them, test them, break them. They're just there. There's also a list of sort of other packages that are compatible. So this brings us on to our front-end team. So for us, in our framework also, we support Sass. About a year ago, I think, some of the front-end team, particularly this guy in the middle, Will, started experimenting with Sass and said, we've really got to start using this. It's going to save us a lot of time. And we now think it saves about a third development time on CSS. We develop support within our framework natively using .NET bundling and bundle transformer. But just about when we just started using that, Tim and Warren started talking about Optimus. So we were like, wow, this is really cool. So we've done a lot of work into Optimus, and it really is a dream come true for these two guys particularly, because they can just load their Sass in and it compiles and everything just straight in Umbraco. So if you haven't used it, it's definitely worth checking it out. So I'm just going to talk about the packages that we use. And for any framework, I think the majority of it is really made up of various different packages. And it's a pretty amazing ecosystem. All these sort of packages just add so much to the solutions that we output. So uComponent 6, which obviously, particularly for Umbraco 6, I'm not sure about Umbraco 7 yet, but there's some really good new data types in Umbraco 6 that weren't there in uComponent 6 that weren't there in 5. So definitely download it, install it, and see what they are. Who's ever made a site without damp? I don't know. We certainly haven't. We also use CropUp extensively for managing all of our crops. And another thing we use a lot, well, we use with this framework, is the property editor value converter for damp. In fact, we use that as well for the core products, for the core property editors, which just makes writing Razor for front-enders so easy, particularly with multi-node tree picker and this type of thing. Image resizer.net, which comes with CropUp, is kind of essential. And then some recent additions that we've added in, which is a combination of front-end, back-end, Slimage and Slim Response. This brings adaptive responsive imaging to our front-end solutions out of the box. Uses image resizer under the hood, and you'll see we've actually added this into the hybrid framework. So I think Jeroen will be showing you how that works a bit later on. One thing we do add, which is not open source, is the image resizer disk cache plugin, which you don't need. Image resizer works without it, but it certainly does a lot for your performance if you have it, and it's $849 for like an agency license, so you can use it as much as you like for as many clients you like, and they have other models as well. But what it does just means that every time an image is requested, it doesn't have to be generated. It's actually saved to disk the first time. So more packages. These ones, SEO Checker, which is a bargain at €99. It just does all of the SEO stuff that you don't need to worry about anymore. This is Structure Extensions V2 is a really nice little package for Umbraco 6. I don't know if it's even incorporated in Umbraco 7, but it just does. The V2 one just does one very simple thing, which lets you have a default child document type on each document type, so that when someone creates a news item, it selects the right one. Optimus, I mentioned. Usync. We have Usync on all of our sites. I don't know if you saw the Usync session, but we use it primarily to source control changes. So we primarily use its ability to just write the database stuff to disk, so that we can blame people when something's changed that shouldn't have been changed, which you can't do otherwise. Some of the other ones that are worth mentioning: Document Sorter is very useful for news, particularly, and Contour, Easy Search. A few other ones that we add when needed. These are relatively recent developments, but they're actually very useful to know about. Is the Image Cropper Extended package by Dirk. This is basically a fixed version of the core proper, where everything works as it should, but it also uses the iFile system provider. So what that means is there's like a hook that happens when a crop's saved. And then these other two packages, depending whether you want to use Amazon CloudFront or Azure CDN, can pick up on that and automatically save not only your images, but also all the crops created to CDN. And then these packages have these really cool parsers as well. So even when you've put an image into a rich text, when it's output on your front end, it will still go to Azure or CloudFront CDN. So all of your imaging on your front end can be served from CDN, and it's just install these packages, change a few bits of config, and it's done, which is pretty impressive. So pretty cool. They're made by these two guys here. So something else we do in our framework is we customize, have some customized dashboards. I know there was a lot of people used to sort of change the Umbraco login screen to add a client logo and that type of thing, just to make clients feel warm and feel that they own their content management, which is fine, except when you upgrade Umbraco, you lose it. So instead of doing that, we just sort of added a very simple configurable custom dashboard section that just shows them their logo when they log in every time. There's some other useful stuff as well in the custom dashboards that like reads out package versions and tells you if there's an update and that type of thing. So some of the major changes from the Umbraco sort of default install into our framework is a lot of configuration tweaks. And these all come from things that we've learned over time, just through implementation and clients ringing up and saying something's broken. So one of the main ones, one of the most useful ones, is changing the maximum upload size. So you just deploy a website and the next day or a few days later, a client rings up, I can't upload 20 meg PDF. So you can just not do that just by having in your framework, extending it, I think this is to 150 megabytes or something, this first one here. The second one, the JSON serialization, this is suddenly your multi-node tree picker stops showing anything. This is because your nodes within it have grown to a size that's beyond the maximum JSON size. So just set it higher than what it is. I think it's 500,000. SVGs. I think this is actually included in Umbraco 7 already, this one. So there's no need for your front-end developers to spend a day trying to work out what they've done to their SVG, that's why it's not been served up on the website. It's probably just that RIS doesn't know what a SVG file is. So just add this one in to your static content definition. Next one is compression. It's great when you launch a website and it's all good, and then the client goes and installs PageSpeed or Wiseflow or some other online testing service and comes back and says, my website says it's only got 50 out of 100 on the score, it's really slow. So a few, well, in fact in this case, of one line in web config, which is client cache, will mean that you'll never see this. This is from PageSpeed. You'll never see the leverage browser caching suggestion from PageSpeed or Wiseflow. It just sets the how old the file should be able to before they expire. Compression, again, this is a one-liner you can put in your web config. You have to have the module installed in RIS as well, but it's just an option built into Windows. It's just not turned on by default. The dynamic one does have a CPU overhead, so if you do enable dynamic compression, then depending on the site, you need to just check how much CPU that's actually using. But it does mean that you'll never see the enable compression suggestion. And your HTML and all of your static assets will be sent to the browser gzipped by RIS automatically. URL character replacement. So this list can obviously go on forever. This list is one that was sort of derived from Tim at Site Doctor, and we've added some more as well that we've come across over time. So it's just make sure that all the URLs, all the characters that shouldn't be in URLs are not. A lot of these will stop Google will actually make Google abort the indexing the page it's looking at, and they're just not very friendly if they've got funny characters in them. This is a little tip. We do generally develop with shared database. So developers are running the sites locally, but generally sharing the database. We'll often have a QA site as well. And one clever little thing we've used is, when developing in this way, is to disable the XML cache on the for everyone, so that Umbraco is always looking at the database for the latest content. So when someone changes it, it changes for everyone. But one of the problems with that is if someone has a document type or changes content, then it can become stale on the QA server that the client might be putting content in, for instance. So you can use load, but you can use the load balancing settings as in Umbraco, so that when a developer changes anything in their back office, it'll actually ping the development site as if it was load balanced and say refresh your cache. So this is a pretty handy little misuse of a feature. Obviously, document type convention is something that everybody has probably, but everybody has different. This is our one. We debated it a long time ago for a long time. We just have master document type, which is just everything that every page must have, and the site-specific one, because we're often thinking about multi-site at the very beginning, even if we're only developing one site at the time. And then content and homepage sort of come underneath that, and then every other page sort of would generally come under the content one. We also have one extra convention, which is this is data node property, which is a label, so it doesn't actually ever have any value. We add it to any document type that's going to represent a piece of data that's never actually going to be a page. So as long as it's set, then every single sort of existing piece of Razor or C# will always exclude anything that has this property. So it just sort of immediately forgets it, or doesn't output it into a nav or a sitemap, for instance. And that is everything I've got to say about having an agency framework. Jeroen is going to come and show the hybrid framework, which I should just say is sort of like Jeroen's experiencing of agency framework, and then we sort of came together with this idea, and we've added a lot of our framework, and it's sort of bouncing backwards and forwards, and it's been made open source, so everybody can benefit from our learning. So over to Jeroen.
Hi, I'm Jeroen Breuer. I'm from the Netherlands. I work for the company Have a Nice Day Online, formerly known as Digibus and Tribal. And I'm going to talk about the hybrid framework today. It's an open source framework, and just like which Jeavon just told, we use it as a basis for all our websites. It also comes with packages and document types and more predefined things. So it's an MVC framework. We don't use web forms anymore. MVC has been in Umbraco for about a year now, and it's evolved quite nicely. In 6.1.2 they added some nice new features, and now it's a really nice way to work with Umbraco. So in the hybrid framework we use route hijacking, but it's not mandatory. I don't know if people used route hijacking before, but in Umbraco, if you create a new template, it's only a view, and you can do all your logic in the view. But with MVC, it's better to do that in a controller. At least that's my opinion. So that's when you can use route hijacking. And for example, if we have a news page, the moment you're on an overview, you need to fetch the data of your children. So basically you write a simple inquiry, model.content.children, and I see a lot of that happening in the view, but in my opinion that should be in a controller. It's logic, and I don't want to see it in my views. Another new thing is that everything is a service controller. If you've used route hijacking in Umbraco, you probably used the render MVC controller for that. But in 6.1.2, a new interface was added, and if your controller inherits from that interface, that can also be used for route hijacking. So we chose to use service controllers for that because service controllers are already used for HTML actions and posting in Umbraco. And now we can use those same service controllers also for route hijacking. So it's basically everything can happen in the same controller. It also comes with a default controller. So, like I said, the route hijacking is mandatory. You can create your own controller and do your logic in there, but there are situations like a simple content page or a news item page where there isn't a lot of logic and where you can just do everything in your view. So you don't need an extra controller for that. But in this case, if you don't have your own controller, it will be using this default controller. And the benefit from that is that with a default controller, we use output caching on our controllers. So it doesn't matter which page we use, that we can always use the output cache attribute. And another thing is that because everything goes through a controller, we can always pass in our own model, even if an Umbraco page doesn't need it, we could still do it, and we do. It also comes with a bunch of extension methods. For example, if you want to use damp in Razor, there are several ways of doing it, and I just wrote an extension method for it. So you can just do model.content.get cropped images, and the rest is done for you. So it comes with a bunch more of those. Of course, it's also it comes with a few pre-installed packages. No surprise that it also comes with damp, and there are also things like crop up and U components. But we also have Dude installed. Anyone who knows Dude, raise your hands. Okay, a few. So with Dude, if you have custom tables in your database, it's very easy to actually manage those custom tables in Umbraco. You just have a simple config file. You do a few settings, and then all of a sudden you can manage your custom tables inside Umbraco. And in the Hybrids framework, we also do that. We don't use Contour, at least not in this situation. But we do have an email form, and we do store the email also in the database. And with Dude, it's very easy to also just show that email in the Umbraco backoffice. It also comes with SEO checker and easy search, and also track media, which is if you have a gallery and you click on an image, then it's also being transferred to Google Analytics. That's all done for you. It also has some change settings, just like Jeavon told them. I'm not going to mention all of them, but for example, we disabled some of the log types in the Umbraco settings, and we also made some changes for TinyMCE. We had a couple of editors complain like, hey, I paste something in the HTML and it gets stripped out, so we made it a bit more flexible. That at least our editors preferred that, so we changed that for them. This is also a setting, but I mention it separately. Since Umbraco 4.10, the pipeline has been rewritten by Stefan, and it wasn't possible anymore to use an alt template if you had an internal redirect. And with all of our websites, we have our top node and we have our homepage as a child node of that, and we do an internal redirect to the homepage. It's the Cult of Ultimate website setup. I don't know if anyone read that blog. Yeah. So we're using that technique, but if you're using that, you have an internal redirect on your homepage, and all templates don't work on that. At least they didn't. I talked with Stefan about it, and he made a setting in 6.1.2, I think, which enables it again. And in the hybrid framework, that also is enabled, so you can use it again. It also comes with caching and bundling plus minification. The cache is, we use donut output cache for it. It's an attribute you can put on your controllers. And by doing that, you're basically caching your entire controller and the view which is being returned. So it really caches a lot, and it's a very good way of caching, but it can cache too much. For example, if you have a login, the first person that logs in gets to see his username, and all the other people also see that username. That's something you don't want, and that's why we're using donut output caching. I'll demo it later, but you can have your view, your razor view, and you can just say, okay, I want to cache the entire view except for a few parts like the login name. So that's where the donut thing comes from. And it also comes with a simple web API, just an example actually, just to show how you can use the web API in Umbraco. It's been approved by Shannon. When I was, Shannon is the one who did most of the MVC stuff together with Stefan. And when I was at the retreat this year, I actually reviewed together with him the hybrid framework. And he also gave some feedback about the default controller and how we can use service controllers for everything. That was actually his idea. And when he saw it, he actually also got really excited about how the way we implement things with the hybrid framework. So that was the presentation. Now it's demo time. Let's hope it goes well. So this is basically, if you download it from GitHub, this is what you get. Not really a good front-ender, but it's more about the technical part of it. So here we have a simple news overview with some paging on it and with some news details. So if we go to the view, then we can see that we get our own news overview model, and because we have our own model, we can do model.news items and things like that. I'll show it. So here we have our own model with the news items and the pager on it. It inherits from the base model again, and the base model inherits from the render model, and that is what also kind of makes it hybrid, because all of the models that we're using also use the default Umbraco model. So I can do model.news items, but I can still do the default things like model.content.get property value. So it's flexible to use like this. So we have model.news items and model.pager, and this way the view stays very clear. You know, you don't see any link queries here or things like that. That's what happens in the controller. So I have my controller here. First I build my model, get the news items and the pager, set it on the model, and just return that again. And this is just my my link query here. So this is a way of doing it with the hybrid framework. Put your logic in a controller where it should be, in my opinion. So that's the news overview. And we also have a detail page. And as you can see on the detail page, it just uses the default Umbraco template page. We don't need a model for this. We just have the extension methods that I mentioned. So we can just do get cropped image and get property value. So show the news, show the image. That's basically all it does. So no need to put a controller behind this. However, this does inherit from a master page. And if we go to the master page, we can see that that actually does have its own model. And that's where the default controller comes in. So we have our news detail page, which actually doesn't have a controller. So that means it goes to the default controller. And in my default controller, I build my base model. And like I said, I don't need the base model on my news item, but I do need it on the master page. And by doing this, I can have things like model.news items in my master page. There are several ways of doing this, like with an HTML action, or you can just also do here your link query. Like I said before, I don't want to do that. So by having a default controller and building the model here, I have my base model with model.menu items and widgets, and also my link stuff, all happening in my base controller. So yeah, that's really the hybrid part actually. You can really put all your logic in controllers, and you can still have pages which you don't put a controller behind. But even in the master page, you can use your own models. On other pages, you can use your own models. It's a very flexible way of doing things. You decide what happens where and where it happens. Another thing I'd like to demo is the contact page. So we do have a simple contact page here. I'd like to demo the donut output cache part now. This entire page is now cached, and that's why it's also pretty fast in loading. But as you can see, if I refresh it, the time does get updated. If we're going to the view. So it also doesn't have its own controller. It's just the default controller which we put behind there. We do our model.content things, and here we're using an HTML action, which is posting to a service controller. And by adding this namespace, the MVC donut caching, we have a Boolean exclude from parent cache. So this entire view is cached, but when we use this HTML action, that is not cached. The way I like this is you can use an HTML action, so you can still put logic inside the controller instead of putting it in the view if you don't want to cache it. So if we look at the contact controller, what we see here is it's the same thing as what's in the default controller. We just return the base model because that's what we need for our master page. But like it's already says in the comments, the default controller only gets hit if you don't have your own controller. And in this case, we do have a contact controller which we use for the child action and for posting. So that's why we still need to put our route hijacking here. But actually that makes a nice example, because now you can see we have one controller, it has route hijacking, you can use an HTML action in it, and you can also post to it all in the same way like you would do with any regular MVC project. So if we look, it's a very simple, we have just a datetime and we return that as a partial view, and there we show the dates, and it's not cached. We also have a partial to our contact form. So. And we just posted, and it got here. We just build our form, process the form, and return to a thank you page. All of these things are also part of the hybrid framework. This is just, if you don't use Contour and you want to have your own simple email stuff, this is at least one way of doing it. And if you now go to the back office, we go to the dude section. So that's one of the packages. We renamed it to the email archive. But if I now go to the contact page, then you can see here, this is the form I just posted with some data. And this is all pre-configured. If I can have a look at the dude's config file quickly. So here we just have a couple of things. We just have our select statement to the custom table. We predefine some things, but it's only about 50 rules, and you can manage your custom tables inside Umbraco. Great package. So that was an example of the contact form in the hybrid framework. Everything is done in the same controller. Now there's one more thing I'd like to see. I'd like to demo, and that is a simple gallery. It's a combination. The gallery is a combination of damp and crop up. So if we got an image, you can see it's actually the crop up tool we're using. But even though this is crop up, the image in damp also gets updated. So crops from crop up and damp are working together. And what we're also showing is if we refresh, then here we get the image size of the images. And if I resize now, they get bigger. So they're not just responsive images, they're also adaptive. If we resize the images, they actually also change in size. So that's a nice responsive feature, which is also in their hybrid framework. And if we can just have a look at the code for that. The gallery is also a very simple page, actually. It doesn't even need its own controller. We just have the extension method get cropped images. We have our gallery. And basically, this is all the code you need to build a responsive gallery in the hybrid framework. Yeah, that was it, actually. Are there any questions? Okay, I'm done. That's it.